the community education program, increasing public awareness on animal welfare and rights through grassroots education and campaigns for domestic and exploited animals. In 2016, the program expanded to focus on farmed animal rights, primarily on ending battery cages for layer hens. Monique currently provides strategic advice for the program and is dedicated to improving the lives of farmed animals in Indonesia, where she lives with her partner and a family of furry and feathered, free to be me animal friends. Monique, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shweta. Can you hear me okay? Okay, yes, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining, and I hope that this is going to be a really beneficial session for everybody, including, well, everybody that's working here is working for animals, so it's relative to everybody. I'll just clarify that I am a lay person. I am not a doctor. So this is coming, the information that I've gathered is coming a lot from my personal experience as a founder of a grassroots organization, as a volunteer over the last 12 years, and also working across different sectors of animal care and advocacy. So I have seen the pressures build up across the different sectors, across the different organizations, and how they're growing. The pressures increase, the number of programs each organization takes on, the pressures increase, and so on. And then we've had the COVID recently, which again has added more pressure to the sector and those working in it.
Meeting is being recorded.
So I hope that this will be beneficial, but please note that I am not a doctor. So I am just providing some insights that I've learned along the way, but also I'd just like to share that AFJ has also been taking part in a project, a pilot project called Save Ourselves. So I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. So I'm going to go to the next slide. All right, so the Save Ourselves project is a project that we started because we were concerned about some of the things that were happening in our organization, but also wondering how can we learn more about how to cope with the various traumas that we experience as animal workers. One of the things that we looked at was the kinds of materials available in Indonesia, and basically there's not a lot, so especially related to animal workers. So we decided to start a pilot project, which eventually we hope will provide a toolkit that will be very effective and able to be adapted and used within different countries within Asia. And I'll go on a bit more about why something different for Asia. But basically the project interviewed, or we sent out surveys to people in Indonesia and also in several Asian countries, all working in animal welfare, and got the responses on a number of questions related to mental health and well-being. And we got quite a good response, considering that it's something that not a lot of people have time for when they're so busy with work in this sector. And also a lot of people think, it's not important. We just have to focus on the animals, right? So we collaborated all of those results, and we had some great professionals in the field helping with analyzing and compiling the results, and then we presented them through two gatherings. One was in Indonesia and one was in Asia. And the results of those gatherings and the discussions there will also form the next part of the project, and which will be a further gathering with professionals in the field, people like psychologists, veterinary science faculties, government agencies that could perhaps benefit from understanding that this is an issue that could affect their spheres of work, and how can we work towards helping people understand that compassion fatigue is something that needs to be addressed. So if you're interested in getting the toolkit once it's finished, please let us know. I've put my email at the end, and you can get on the mailing list for that. And thank you everybody here that has already contributed. So today it's going to be very similar to what we did actually, but I am not a doctor. So instead I'm going to be talking about some methods to deal with trauma that perhaps might help. Trauma is something that can trigger compassion fatigue, but it doesn't have to. So before we begin, I'm going to take you through to what is compassion fatigue by asking you, firstly, why did you get into this sector? And that will kind of give an indication of whether you might be susceptible to compassion fatigue. So go to the next slide. Okay, just a moment. There we are. Okay, so warning, there are some scenes here that may be distressing. So if things like this trigger, maybe you should turn away or close your eyes. These are some of the things that we work with day to day at AFJ. As I said before, we're a little bit different. We don't just work in the farmed animal sector. We began with domestic animals doing education because there were so many cases of animals on the streets. But we're not just limited there. We also work with exploited animals, animals that are not meant to be consumed, and animals that are being, and also not just directly with animals. If you see on the left side of your screen, we also work for advocacy with farmers, producers, and governments to try and improve the actual regulations and monitoring of these things. So why did you become an animal activist? If you mention that it's because you care, you hate abuse, you have to do something to stop this, you feel angry, perhaps you're a vegan and you want to increase the message to begin plant-based lifestyles. Perhaps you want to save the world for animals. Perhaps you want to stop farming or increase the care for animals around your neighborhood. Whatever you answer, if it's related to caring, then you are empathetic. You have empathy for animals. And this is one of the key factors that causes compassion fatigue. So moving on. So what is compassion fatigue? So it's mostly described as exhaustion due to compassion stress, which is the demands of being empathic and helpful to those who are suffering. And it can be related to humans, but it's in our situation, it's more likely related to animals. It's very prevalent in animal workers, especially in sanctuary situations or those in investigation or those that are seeing footage daily of the worst kinds of abuses. It can be suddenly triggered by seemingly unrelated events or by things that wouldn't normally elicit a strong emotional response. So perhaps you've been exposed to all this, but at the time you deal with it. But then later, when you get home, something triggers and you're a mess. Yeah, you're crying or you're angry or irritated, those kind of things. It differs from burnout but it can coexist with burnout. It can occur due to exposure to one case of trauma or to cumulative levels of trauma. So it mentioned burnout. So burnouts are a little bit different. it's more exhaustion of physical or emotional strength. It's usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. And it could be work pressure related. So the pressures from your organization or from yourself actually, to keep on doing it, don't stop. It could be limited to those, it's not limited, sorry, to those who work with the animal trauma itself. So again, you care so much and you want to do anything and everything to stop whatever it is you are fighting for, so you don't stop. It's nonstop. Every night you're thinking about it, taking meetings, going on the weekends to campaigns or whatever it is. You're spending so much time that you're physically and emotionally burnt out. It's often experienced by those highly idealistic about helping others, because you want to do something, but then when it appears that either your family, the organization, or the system is not supporting a quick and swift action, it may cause terrible frustration, because it's something that might take years and years, but you have to see the effect of the abuse or something every day and you want it to stop. So these are two different things, but they can be they can exist side by side. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide. I'm not going to explain a lot about this because, as I said, I'm not a doctor and I haven't done a degree in this, but I found a really interesting graphic that shows the pathway to compassion fatigue. So you can see that if you answered that you care about animals, and that's the reason you do this work, that you probably have the ability to feel empathy, which is the identification with and understanding of another's situations, feelings, and motives. And further on from this, you are probably compassionate then. And compassion is a deep awareness of the suffering of another, and also the wish to relieve that suffering. So it's kind of a focused, action-oriented empathy. It's like the next step when you actually do stuff. When you have challenges against these efforts of doing something to relieve it, the suffering, then you may not be able to act to do it, to relieve it. The things you've seen, the things you've experienced, you can't stop it at that time anyway. This could present with a variety of symptoms that could indicate compassion fatigue. And so we're going to have a look now at what are some of the symptoms of compassion fatigue. And you might be feeling some of these things and not realizing it's actually compassion fatigue. And it may not be, it may just be that you're tired or something. But these are indicators, especially if you've got a lot of them, that you might be feeling, you might be experiencing compassion fatigue. So you can have a read of this while I just quickly have a look at my notes. I've only got 15 minutes for such a large topic. So I'm just going to take out a few things that I thought were important. Imagine that you're in charge of replying to comments on social media. You're constantly having to deal with seeing abuse, but also with dealing with abuse from people online because of the campaigns you're doing, or because you're maybe doing a campaign against a fast food restaurant, or saying things against producers and things like that online. You're calling out certain abuses in your posting, and people are angry because they see it as you attacking something that they enjoy or that they like. They might be angry because you're attacking something that would take away jobs and so on. You have to answer direct messages from people wanting to dump their kittens at your sanctuary, but you're already full. You're getting requests for people to rescue, but there's no more space and you don't have enough staff. And there are not enough funds. You don't have enough money to cover the animals that you rescue, and you're continuously having to find funding. The staff can't cope because there's so many animals to care for and they're doing their best, but you want them to have the best life, but people aren't adopting enough. There are hundreds of messages that keep coming in every day. You have feelings of guilt, dismay. You're overwhelmed by the sheer number of cases and the horrible things that are happening to these animals. But how can you answer them all? How can you save them all? So does that sound familiar? If you are feeling like, oh, I feel like crying, I feel like screaming or something, well, these are the things that could be an indication that you might need to do some strategies to help you with this compassion fatigue symptoms. So many distressing symptoms are felt in the body, a tightness in the chest, a sinking feeling in the stomach, a knot in the throat, or a chronic feeling of exhaustion. You might, in the last picture, you might think, I can't do it anymore. You know, I can't do it. But then if you stop, the feeling of guilt from walking away is just even more. It makes it even worse. So how can you deal with all of these? Yeah. It also, if you look at the slide, it also tells about maybe some of the things that happen at work. You might get angry with your people at work. You might have problems at home because you're bringing it home, or maybe they don't understand you. Why are you so upset? You know, all of these things. And we also found in our surveys that people were also mentioning that they were going to substances and so on to being able to cope, you know, with the long hours, the thoughts, the dreams, the flashbacks, and so on. So all of these are things that happen, and we need to understand that they do happen and learn strategies to cope with them. All right, so animal workers in Asia actually tend to experience more traumatic cases on average and higher numbers of cases compared to developed countries. Let's have a look at why. So in the Asian context, it's not the same in all countries, of course, and forgive me if I use terminology that's not perhaps the most up-to-date politically correct, because I don't study that sort of stuff. But we've noticed, and also from the studies that we've done, animal abuse that's illegal in other countries is seen as okay here. Yeah, like keeping animals forever in a small cage. What does that do then? It causes us anger, frustration, grief, trauma. We see more cases because of this. It's in your face because it's seen as normal. A second thing is unsupportive apparatus. We have weak laws or perhaps weak punishment. So even if we bring the abuse to the apparatus, they're either not willing to do anything, or if it does get to the courts, the punishment is nothing. So it's not really a deterrent. And again, you've worked so hard to get them to the court, and then nothing happens, or they just get a slap on the wrist. Again, that causes pressure, and we feel like, what's the point of doing that? You know, working for animals is trivialized. So a lot of people, I can't speak for other countries, but in Indonesia, I've noticed it a lot, that parents would like their children to have good jobs, like a doctor or a lawyer or work for the government. Now, when you come home and say, hey, mom, I'm going to go and work for animals, yay, they're like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to university and you're going to be a doctor, that kind of thing. So these, a lot of our volunteers get that thing. And also our founders, they've experienced that and fought to be able to work in this sector. But the pressure from your family is quite intense if that happens. And others have been forced to leave, and they've had to quit doing a job in this sector because, yeah, their parents said you have to quit and go and be a doctor or something. So again, that in itself is a lot of trauma for that person that has had to leave. It's seen to threaten livelihoods. I talked about that a little bit previously with the case study. You get anger and abuse from the public a lot. It causes, fear when you've been abused or threatened online or even personally, which has happened to AFJ before. It's scary, yeah. And again, that causes more anxiety. And then you've just got the immense scope of the issues. Yeah, there's a lot of poverty. All of these things cause more animal suffering on the streets and in production, more, what do you call it? I've lost the word. When somebody is used, like animals are used for a purpose. I can't remember the word, sorry. But anyway, you get more of it and you see it, but in many times you have to walk away. You can't go and buy that one animal because it's just perpetuating the problem. So you walk away, but those eyes looking at you, you never forget them and they play back on you, right? And then finally, you've got the lack of sustainable funding in the region, especially for domestic animals. There's not a lot. You've got, in some cases, longer weekdays, longer working days, longer hours, high expectations. And also for grassroots organizations like ours, we had a lack of planning. Like we just did it. And now we're finding we have to change the way we do things so that we don't have that pressure. Again, finally, in some regions, expressing emotion or talking about mental health is a real sign of weakness. And it's considered weakness, yeah? And so a lot of people won't talk about it. They just keep going until they can't go anymore and something happens. That's very negative. All right, so all of these factors exacerbate or compound the already existing abuses and things that we see in animal sectors. I'll just quickly touch on a study from the US Center for Disease Control. It revealed that approximately 1 in 3 veterinarians have anxiety, 1 in 6 has considered suicide, and there's a suicide death rate at least 3 times higher than the general population. So this is then compounded again by the animal carer versus vet factor. Compassion fatigue in the animal carer community by the Humane Society, according to the Humane Society of the United States, states that animal caregivers seem to be exposed to more negative situations than their veterinary counterparts. So when this is compounded with the factors that are more present in Asia that we've just looked at, it could be that compassion fatigue and burnout are more prevalent in Asia than we know. So it's something to really think about, that this is something that we need to address all across the sector, because it is, I feel it's very real in Asia, and it's proven too from the studies that we've done. So let's look at now some ways to deal with this kind of stuff. All right, so there's this, this is borrowed from today's veterinarypractice.com. But I thought it was a really good thing, and I've been practicing it myself when I get a trigger event, like seeing something traumatic and I have to walk away. The animals need us to last. That's clear because we're fighting for them. But how do we last? There's a good acronym here. It's called listen, accept, seek, and test. So the first thing that, the reason why it's important is because when a trigger happens, that's the point when something affects you and you feel there's something wrong, yeah? You've just experienced a trigger. Listen to your body first. Maybe you are feeling physically sick. Maybe you want to cry. You might feel pain in your body. You're angry. You might be sad, frustrated. All these things are real and need to be addressed. So listen to your body. Take a break and think about how you're feeling right now in this moment. Once you've done that, you've got to accept that you are not doing okay, but not self-judging yourself. Don't judge yourself harshly when you feel overwhelmed. It's a natural thing that we experience. Accept that you've experienced these feelings and it's related to something you've just been through. This is when we're talking about immediate triggers, yeah? This may happen while you're sitting at home eating dinner and suddenly you want to cry, but you can use this at the same time. So accept that you're doing okay, that you are not doing okay, and that it's okay to accept these feelings without the harsh judgment, without making yourself feel guilty about what you feel that you've done, like walking away or something. Next is to seek a plan in that moment to find a solution. And this is something that you're doing immediately, but you're not fixing the problem, right? But you're doing something to take a step. And a lot of this is just giving yourself the time to take that first little step after you've listened. Something's wrong. Accept, okay, I'm doing my best, but something's wrong. I need to sit for a bit and do something. Okay, perhaps you need to cry. Perhaps you want to scream into a pillow. Perhaps you want to just take some deep breaths, do some yoga, do some meditation, stop, eat, drink, stretch. You might feel like stretching now after this. So far, it's been pretty heavy. But the important thing is not that you're fixing how you feel immediately, but that you're trying something. So you're getting yourself out of that. I think it's called I haven't studied it, but I've looked at a few things. It's called a vagus nerve, and it regulates your body for flight and fight. And that's what happens when you get triggered. So you need to bring yourself back down to a level where you feel, okay, I'm thinking more level. My emotions, my feelings are starting to calm down. And after you've found that point, then you start thinking to the next step, not too far forward, just, okay, perhaps I know what I've just seen. I know that I need to do something, but the only thing that I could do now is this. And the rest will follow after, but I could do this right now. Okay, and it might be just talking to someone about it. It might be sending an email. It might be not doing anything, but just thinking through, maybe writing a journal about what you experienced. And that's something that's very recommended. But do something that will make you feel that I'm actually taking a step to make this feeling into something that's helpful for me, but also maybe because we're all caring about animals, that will help towards your goal. And then perhaps it didn't work. Perhaps you need to do this several times. And that's why it says test. It's finding a solution, testing it out. If what you tried didn't seem to help, then try something different next time, or try another thing. Remember, compassion fatigue is not a static condition. So the solution won't be static either. It could change every time. But the main thing is take that step, because we need to last for the animals, yeah? So this is something that if you get to this point, please try this, because it really helps, okay? You can try it in the breakout rooms if you would like, but try it whenever you feel like there's a trigger. All right, I'm going on to the next slide, and remind yourselves again that this is not just about you, but anything that happens with compassion fatigue, it could affect your family, it could affect how you work, it could affect your decision-making processes and all those kind of things. So let's have a look at some more things that you could do to help yourself in a general way. So find a positive support system. It could be having time with your friends at work. It could be time with other friends. It could be through a therapist, a religious advisor, family member that understands, a supervisor, any of those things. But remember that sometimes compassion fatigue can spread. You don't want to, can't say you don't want to, but be aware that it can spread. So if you're feeling trauma, your friends are all feeling trauma, perhaps you need to look for help through your organization. Yeah, and we'll look at that in just a moment. Or perhaps you might want to go outside of that. But the main thing is to, the second thing you can do is give yourself permission to take time off without feeling guilty. When you are on a really heavy assignment, take time out, because that's one of the main things that people forget, is to continue eating, continue drinking, looking after yourself, and having that relaxing time where your brain stops for a bit, stops thinking about the mission. Yeah, so that's really important. And then finally, remember why we're here. I think most of us have companion animals, and they are such a source of relieving this trauma, because they are accepting of you. They don't blame you for anything. They're invulnerable to provider burnout. So no matter how much you talk to them, they're going to listen. And also, yeah, don't forget your blood pressure and heart rate decreases when interacting with them. That's why animals can take the role of carers. Okay, so moving forward, the one thing I want to touch on, which is very important to our organization, and you know, we've had so many issues because we are a reactionary organization. We started off, you know, education, and then we had a disaster. We had to rescue all these animals. Suddenly we had like so many animals and no infrastructure, and that sort of carried through all the way. We kept on getting more and more without proper infrastructure to deal with staff. We've been a volunteer-based and founder-based organization for so long, and then we had to start getting staff. But then we found that, yeah, we were just expecting them to do what we do, and not thinking that, well, perhaps our so full-onness was not really good, and that it's not good for the staff either to take that on. So we really are trying hard to change things and make things more beneficial for everybody in the organization. So how could you do that? Provide a supportive, flexible manager who's open to regular workload assessments in order to reduce trauma exposure. You may not be able to afford that. So why not just hold regular meetings together where you can discuss how staff members are coping? So I'm not talking about your jobs, but how you're feeling. Is there anything that's coming out that you feel like you need to talk about? That kind of stuff. And then it may not be possible. In most cases, it's not, but you could allow staff to control the schedules more. Reduce hours spent working with exposure to trauma is a big one. So those of the staff that are doing that, you could maybe rotate them and provide some flexibility if possible, if your organization can factor that in. So that's about it from me. So I've given you a few strategies. I've given you some indication of what it is and why is it compassion fatigue and burnout possibly more serious in the Asian context. So there's lots of stuff I've talked about. Let's discuss some of the things that maybe you'd like to share or ask, and we've got a couple of questions here. So I think that's, I'm going to hand it over to Shweta now.
Yes,
And
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monique, for this wonderful presentation and so many insights that you've shared with us. We can now proceed for our activity, next activity, which is a break room activity. So,
just Sarah, can you remind us like how many minutes we have? Is there any change in the time?
we can have the breakout room activity for 10 minutes.
Okay. Yep. I set it for 20, so maybe now it changed. Give me a second.
Actually, I think that if we have everybody adding the challenges and future recommendations, it's quite okay to go for like 15 minutes, because that will give time for people to discuss this quite a bit more.
Okay.
And then we can leave the last bit just looking at what happened, to what everybody thought was a good idea or what they've experienced.
Okay, I'll leave it for 50 minutes then.
Yeah, I think that's
I'll open the room now. Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing? Oops, sorry. Sorry, I'm playing it. Right, so this is what we will be discussing, right? Do anyone want to start?
Hi, Tan. Nobody's in my room. Shall I just stay in this room?
Oh,
I have the same question. Are we having different groups in different rooms, or are we doing the activity together here?
Maybe I couldn't. Nobody's joining the rooms. Do people know how to join rooms? If not, yeah, we need to assign them to the rooms first. And I don't think they're assigned yet. Should I do that?
no, it's randomly.
Okay, so they can
assigned
randomly
people.
join. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think nobody's joined either room, so maybe we should just stay in this room and discuss it together. Would that be okay?
There are some unassigned people in the main entrance, so maybe just all go there, and I'll close all the rooms now. Is
Close
that
the
okay?
rooms and just stay in the. Okay.
Yeah, main room.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. I think we're just waiting for Shweta and Brooke to join us. So if you would prefer not to go into the breakout rooms, then let's just have a quick discussion here. So I brought up a lot of issues, and you may or may not be dealing with these kind of issues in your work, or perhaps you've got a friend that or a colleague that deals with these issues.